The South African Human Rights Commission will conduct a two-day oversight visit to flood-hit areas like Ladysmith and Dundee in KwaZulu-Natal. It's also calling for rights to be respected while responding to the disasters, which have collectively claimed around 60 lives in the province over the past few weeks. Newly appointed South African Human Rights Commissioner Chris Nissen joins us for more. Chris, very good evening. Thanks for your time. And I'd like to congratulate you on your new appointment and possibly start with a conversation on what is your mandate in this office that you've been appointed to?
Well, we've got 8 commissioners and with the whole staff in 9 provinces and so on. Our mandate stems from our act, which derives its basis from Chapter 2 of the Constitution that says we must monitor, promote and protect rights in this country. And that is what we've been doing, is to create a landscape in South Africa, a landscape of human rights culture on every level in terms of the threefold mandate.
Now, you've got a site visit happening in a couple of days. What specific actions is the South African Human Rights Commission taking to monitor and address the impact of floods?
Well, it's not the first time that the Commission has been involved in it. You will remember a few years ago, and even now this time around, our office in the KZN under the leadership of our provincial manager has been monitoring and engaging with the local authorities and making sure that, the necessary assistance are given to the affected communities. But at the same time, when we had a flood disaster committee since the last flood, when many people lost their lives, we have engaged with government because people lost their houses, they lost their lives, and we've been in it and say, how are you going to do to ensure that that you can't stop a flood, but you can at least make preparation and have your disaster management and your disaster process in place so that you can avoid those kind of things. Even if a flood comes, at least you can minimize the impact of it. And so our office in the KZN has been involved, and we have ourselves been involved as the Commission with the KZN provincial government.
So how does the SAHRC plan to engage with the relevant authorities following its monitoring activities? Obviously, you'd like to ensure speedy and appropriate response to the ongoing crisis situations caused by floods and adverse weather conditions. And I'd imagine some of your conversations have to be long-term because KZN has been suffering from floods over the last, 24 to 36 months.
Exactly. And, one of the things is that, we all say about global climate, and I think this is a lot of legitimate grounds for that. But if you know about it and the patterns in the past years and the patterns going forward, then at least as an authority, you make preparations. And so that is the kind of things that we've engaged with them in the past, because communities were uprooted. We still don't know even where some of the bodies are of people that got lost. Graveyards were uprooted and so on. So, yes, we will be, as the Commission will really, at this time around, sit down with the authorities, as we're planning to do, to ensure that preparations are taken to ensure that even if there's a flood, that at least that or storms or whirlwinds or something like that, that at least some preparation is in place so that we minimize the impact of these floods. I don't know how floods are floods, and sometimes they're vicious, but at least people that live in informal areas, people live on the slopes of the hills in KZN, at least that we need to make sure that there is some form of not only relief when the floods happen, but also when before the floods, there are precautionary measures taking place. One of the issues, for example, that we've learned in the Western Cape, on the Cape Flats, is that the storm drains. It's not being cleaned. And so the result, when there's an overflow of water, the water cannot run away. It's a simple thing. Make sure that the storm drains are clean. Make sure that the canals are clean. Make sure that there's a flow for the water, because water, when it's in a mass, it finds its own flow if it doesn't get a way to flow away.
Now, Chris, one of the things that you're calling for in those conversations that you're going to have over the next 2 days, it's for human rights to be respected. Now, there's also the practical side of things. And in a report that my colleague Tando Myandu gave, in Zwelisha outside Durban. Kids are forced to walk to school, risk their lives because a bridge has been washed away, and they are using a tree stump or a tree that's fallen across a river to cross this. So what is the practical side to some of those rights, particularly when we look at children's education? Children have the right to education, but when these floods come in, what do they do? What are you advising?
Exactly. So and some of them fall into the rivers, and then they go wet to school, and they take a long time to get to school. And I'm talking about the past, about what happened as well. And not only there, but also other areas where we see that people have to build their own roads, their own bridges over the roads in order for them to walk over. So the fact of the matter is, the government of the day need to look at those things. And that's why we say, you plan beforehand. You don't just wait until there's a disaster. You've known the disaster over years, so you need to plan and say, what are we doing? In every province, there's a disaster management center. And they are there specifically to look at and map up the disasters and say, where will it occur? How did it occur? When it occurs, what do we do? And these children and women and other men and women crossing those rivers with raging waters sometimes underneath, it's violating their rights, because it's about their lives, their safety, and of course their education, because they are denied an opportunity to be in time, to come to wet to school. And can you imagine sitting there wet in a classroom? But we've seen, particularly in KZN, how the communities have decided to build the bridges for people, not even there, but most rural areas. We have seen how communities took it in their own hands. But what do the governments do in those areas? Because there must be some plan for bridges to be built over those kind of rivers.
Well, you're talking about plans, Chris, and I suppose one of those areas that requires limited planning, because every year there is X number of pupils that are enrolled. Now, the Western Cape Education Department's challenges has faced challenges in placing 688 learners due to budget cuts. What steps is the South Government Human Rights Commission, Western Cape Provincial Office, taking to monitor and intervene in the placement process to safeguard the right to education? I mean, this is a thing that happens annually, but if they're caught unawares, so to speak, and 688 children are unable to go to school, it suggests that there's quite a problem in that planning process that you speak of.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. This is not the first time. When I first entered the commission in 2017, we found that same problem. We engaged the MEC at that time, because I was in the Western Cape. We engaged the MEC. This is a problem that happens every year. Not in the Western Cape, across the country. Now, if you are the head of a department, or if you're a government that knows these things happen every year, what do you then do? Do you put in plans a year ahead to say the migration will be happening so many children will become of 6 years old. Some of them will be obviously moving up grades and so on. So what is it that we need to do? So you see, if a government doesn't prepare for that, it means a government doesn't want a generation to grow and in education. And if a generation doesn't grow in education, it grows into poverty. And so, I'm sorry, but these government departments must pull up their socks. They know how many pupils, how many learners have been registered, how many learners cannot register, but how many learners will turn up at the schools. How many mothers that doesn't have access to internet, they'll come up and turn up at those schools and so on. So the point is, as this commission, we say education is a right. And this right cannot be denied to children because you say, my school is full, or you're not in the right area, or I don't have funds, or all those kind of things. This country needs to educate our children and lift these children out of that poverty. During COVID, we have seen that if my statistics are correct, and I may be wrong in it, But as the Commission, we believe that there were more than about 15,000, I think the DBE put it at 18,000, that children that left school after COVID. So can you imagine, and that's just maybe not even a real figure, but can you imagine that those children that left in primary school, today they're not at school. So all those thousands of children with their families will grow up in poverty. So yes, governments know what happens every year. And the Commission fails to understand why proper plans are not put in place. As the Commission, we're not saying there are plans. As the Commission, we understand the state of schools and state of education in this country. But the Commission appeals to the educators and educational institutions in this country. If you want to take care of the future of this country, take care of these children and make sure those learners are in school.
So, Chris, let's talk about implementation. So you have conversations with the various departments, the Department of Education, for instance, around the 688 kids that haven't been enrolled. How do you enforce some of these rights if they are not adhered to? Does the Commission have powers of enforcement, or is it all limited to just conversations and beyond that, very little more that you can do?
Well, the Western Cape Office are indeed engaged in those conversations. And I must say that it's not about conversations. It is about using the powers of the Commission. And the Commission has determined this time around. That's why the Commission has deployed its commissioners in the end of this week, because we've been the whole week until Friday, we've been involved. You remember there's new commissioners coming on board. It's a new set of commissioners. So we went through education induction program and a strategy. But next week, because a lot of these problems within the schools and around the country is not going to be resolved. This normally gets resolved by the end of January. So most of our commissioners will be in every province and will speak and seek to speak to every MEC, to sit down with them, to seek them and ask for an audience with them and tell them that this, the Commission, the right of a child to education must be respected. And of course, the Commission has got the powers to enforce the right of the child at school. The Constitution is very clear about it.
Commissioner Chris Nissen, appreciate your time. The newly appointed South African Human Rights Commissioner, walking us through the two-day oversight visit that will be carried out in Ladysmith and Dundee in KwaZulu-Natal. You're watching In Focus. Much more to look forward to as we continue to have those conversations around